Premed Office Hours, episode 179. It is our first episode of 2024. Happy New Year. Woo! The ball has dropped. I'm Ryan Gray, founder of Medical School Headquarters, co-founder of Mapped, author of the Premed Playbook, all that good stuff. We also have Courtney Lewis, former director of admissions at Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine. How are you doing, Courtney?
Good. Happy to be kind of closing a cycle, heading into another one. It's always kind of an exciting time of year because everybody is really starting to buckle down for what's to come. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. We also have Rachel Grubs, MCAT test prep, pre-med expert for 20 plus years. How you doing, Rachel?
I'm good. Like Courtney, I'm excited to kick off. To me, this is the start of the 2025 med entry cycle, right? If you're hoping to start med school in 2025, I mean, you've been already working towards it for years, but now is when it really kicks off.
Now is the time. I would love to know how many of you out there are applying this cycle to start med school in 2025. Leave a comment. Let us know. If you are new here, we are typically here almost every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, answering your pre-med questions. So come and ask your questions. I think we have a couple that we can start with. I think.
Most of the comments are yay and Happy New Year. We can throw those up, though.
Happy New Year.
Cookie. Our friend Malay, hope I'm saying your name correctly, Malay. Oh, yeah. Rania says they're in the ongoing cycle. All right. So wishing you many interviews and acceptances, Rania.
Hopefully it's going well. Courtney, as we are starting off 2024, application cycle is going to start opening up here in May. What should students be doing right now as they're gearing up towards this application cycle?
Yeah, there is going to be kind of a lot. I would start scheduling things out so you can pace yourself over a number of months. If you have MCAT prep on top of coursework, on top of applications, that can be a lot to handle. So being very disciplined with your time, potentially reaching out to us kind of for guidance on how to structure that so that you can submit your application at the ideal timeframe. And start pre-writing your secondaries and things like that. So that's a very large question. There's a lot of things that they can be doing, but at least starting something, right? We need to start kind of narrowing down our activities. We need to start drafting out, kind of first versions or second versions of things for all of the different essays that you have to write and gathering the information that you need, building a med school list, any of those things, but you need to be doing something.
Rachel, a big question that students have right now is, am I even ready to apply? How can they figure that out? How can we help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important things you can do is assess your whole profile, not just your stats. Lots of ways to do that, but of course, my favorite way is to use Mapped, which is free. So mappd.com, mapped.com. Free software that Ryan, you and I were dreaming about for years and years, have spent years building. It's going to get even better later in 2024 with a big redesign uplift. But right now, it already works great. You can enter all your courses. We'll calculate GPA for you the way all 3 med school applications do. You can enter your activities, and we can show you what the patterns look like for recency and consistency. You can enter med schools that you're potentially interested in applying to, see if you're missing any prereqs. And then here's the real kicker, how we can help. All of that is sort of self-assessment, and I recommend that. But if you have a Mapped account, the first couple of weeks is a free trial of our pro level. You can message us and ask us questions and we'll answer, or you can pay $10 a month to keep unlimited advising, forever. Or you can book a one-on-one session with Courtney or one of the other advisors and say, hey, here's my Mapped account, let's discuss. And to me, the huge value in either bringing Mapped or prior application or something is you could spend a good 20 or 30 minutes of a 60-minute session just telling us your past. But if you put it all in Mapped, we can size it up very quickly, in 5 or 7 minutes instead of 30. And then you have the rest of your session free to talk about improvements and analysis. So definitely recommend using Mapped, and then definitely recommend having a conversation with an expert about it.
Well, and I think for those who are maybe they haven't seen the med school application because they're not at that point, what Mapped is supposed to do is serve as the application ahead of an active application. So it has, kind of data catches for all of the sections that in the future you will need to be having information on, kind of recalling thoughts or stories or experiences that you have, the GPA calculations and things like that, kind of double checking the coursework. And so it mimics very much some of the main components of the actual application. So if you're a sophomore and you're like, why is Mapped important? Well, if you're filling out Mapped appropriately, a lot of that information is just going to be something that you take over. And if you've been tracking it, you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache. So it's the application that's pre-application ahead of going into an active application cycle.
Yep. Well, yeah, and it's just I think so many people apply not knowing anything. Unfortunately, I got an application today that a parent sent me for their kid, and they're wondering like, why isn't my kid getting into school? No traction, no interviews, no nothing. I look at it and I'm like, stats are okay. They're not great, blown out of the water, but our general framework is it's not just stats, right? They have to be good enough. But you look at their
somebody will always have better stats than you.
Exactly. You look at their clinical experience. It started a month before the application cycle, and then the big clinical experience that they have listed is in clinical experience. It's something not. It's just front desk admin work, and so it's just it's rough. And then you tell
that's why we're out here. That's why we're out here doing these every week.
Yeah.
And
our call with one of our advisors would prevent thousands of dollars sunk in an application.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, that's the way ignorance works, right? Like you don't know what you don't know. So someone out there is going, wait, I was going to get all my clinical on my gap year. Is that a problem? And we're telling you it's a problem because you are assessed on what happens when you apply. Right. So if you're going to start med school August 2025, they're looking at you based on what you've done by May 2024. And also, although this is a whole other topic, clinicals shouldn't be about checking a box, right? It should be something you do ongoing because you love it. So we're here to help. We're going to try to clarify all these mysteries for you.
That's the goal. All right. Do we have any questions? Ready to rock?
Yeah, it looks like a few came in.
Grace asks, do you have any tips navigating the MSAR? I keep finding discrepancies between MSAR and the school's websites. Yeah. The MSAR is a tool that typically schools feed into generally once a year. It's up to the schools to keep feeding it, but schools can change their policies anytime and update their website. So the website is the ultimate answer. Would you agree with that, Courtney? Obviously,
yep.
When you're at a school, you have your own website. For DO schools, they have to choose DO Explorer. For MD schools, they have the MSAR. Like there are a million places to keep stuff updated. Is the school's website the kind of end all be all?
Yes. Yep. That'll be the place because you're right in the fact of it's usually updated one time a year. You get a form that you fill out that's standardized that goes out to all of the schools. You input the data that you can, and then you send it off. Now, you may go through all of the hassle of updating things here and there, but particularly right now, when we're closing a cycle and about to open a new cycle, you may see more of those discrepancies because they have not submitted their updated policies for this upcoming cycle. So if anything has changed, it will be on their website. So that is the best point of reference as you're going forward. Obviously, we hope that the MSAR, remains accurate, but yes, because of timing of when things are submitted, when the AdComs meet, or any of the board members that have to approve things and stuff like that, there's going to be a couple months here from January to about March where there is a little bit of movement where you're having to track stuff.
Good question.
Mm-hmm.
Angel, do you happen to know if there's a resource that shows the number of accepted students who interviewed for a school? I know the MSAR shows matriculated number of students, but not accepted. Yeah, this is always a tricky one, Rachel, in terms of accepted versus matriculated. Do you know any resources that show accepted interviewed students?
I don't think so. I mean, it might be on some schools' websites, but yeah, I mean, there could be, and you know, Courtney, you can speak to this as a former director of admissions, but there could be schools that don't want to answer that, right? Because
Absolutely.
accepted versus matriculated might be a number that the school doesn't want to share because
They're
they don't want to
embarrassed.
show you how many people got in and chose somewhere else. So I totally respect why you're asking. I don't know if it's Angel or Angel, Miss Aviles. But yeah, I don't think that many schools are going to want to share that data, frankly.
Yeah. So expand on that, Courtney. Like, why would they not want to share that?
Well, because the number is affected by a lot of things that could be outside of your control. Some schools may just interview high volume. And so if they show that and they just accept high volume, yeah, it could look like, ooh, not a lot of people stick to that school, but there could be a lot of factors going into that.
Yep.
So I think, yes, there's going to be some nuances, even if they do publish that number. Any number can be made to look how you want it with the, some tweaking, if you will. So don't take everything at face value as far as data points. But yeah, it shouldn't really matter if they're extending more acceptances. If you want to go there, take the acceptance.
Yeah, what is the question for, Angel?
Yeah.
I want to know, like, why are you asking the question? What game are you trying to play here?
Yeah.
Because that'd be interesting.
I mean, yeah, there's some schools, where if it's a state school, you're going to get in-state tuition. Why wouldn't you take that? But then you applied other places and maybe held a couple of acceptances those. So then that would be kind of a knock against those other schools, but it's just because students apply very broadly. Most designate 20 schools. Mm-hmm. So we don't have control over that, like we shouldn't. And so, I don't really know. I mean, what you could reference is how many interviews they do and how many seats they have in their class. Because if it's, 100 seats and they're interviewing 800 people, there may be some turnover, either that or they're really padding that wait list, which most schools won't go through the effort to do. So there's little things like that that may inform you, but I'm not sure what the point of knowing that number would be.
Yeah.
Yep. It's very common. I was having conversations in the Premed parent Facebook group that we're in, where, and even Premeds do this too, is they see a number and then they make a meaning of that number. I'm like, we can't make judgments based on this number. It's a number, right? It could mean 1,000 different things. And I think what Angel is potentially going towards is how easy is it to get into this school if they're interviewing lots of people, they're accepting lots of people.
That was my thought too, although she did just clarify. You can see this other comment. Oh, wait, can you put Angel's other comment back up? Yeah, there you go. That one of the schools she's interviewing does actually share it in a podcast, which is cool. But yeah, that's rare.
Yep.
And again, that data may be 100% accurate, but you need to know what goes into that number before you let it really pull you in any one direction.
Yeah, it seems to me like if someone's really hungry in a stat, what you just said is number of interviews versus open spaces gives you some degree of insight. And then beyond that, not many people get an interview. So if you get one, it's a huge compliment. It's still not a guarantee. And I
Sure
mean,
is.
I know, like I love pre-meds. You hunger for certainty. It's not here.
And it's a good thing that it's not, right? I know a lot of the times pre-meds get frustrated because there isn't super clear dividing lines, or we can't give you a hard number or stats like this. But if it was that cut and dry,
Yeah.
anybody outside of just a cookie cutter, very privileged section would make it in. And that should not be the case. So as frustrating as it is, you should be thankful that they give themselves the latitude to really explore beyond having to put very narrow limitations on this path. So.
Yeah, good point.
All right.
Good question, though.
Hi, Mapped. Thank you for your resources you post. I've listened to every podcast. I'm so grateful to have received 19 interview invites, 11 acceptances this cycle. How do I mitigate debt and get the most scholarships? Oh, first of all, congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
nailed
fantastic.
It's amazing.
What's the game here, Courtney? How does someone take all of the success and turn it into cash?
Well, I mean, you can see what financial aid kind of offers you if there's opportunity. I think scholarships are kind of few and far between once you reach this level of education, unless you plan on going into rural primary care or certain specialties that need more physicians kind of going into it. And then it's kind of a payback service where they'll pay for your school, but then you agree to go and work there for a certain amount of time. I know some physician groups do that, some hospitals do that, some schools will do that and things. So there's opportunity there. Usually the state school is going to be affordable. The other things to keep in mind, tuition sometimes is not the biggest cause of debt. Sometimes it's just the cost of living. So let's say, not to pick on San Francisco, but let's pick on San Francisco. Like if you get accepted there, they may have a slightly lower tuition dollar. But if you think about all the toll roads, paying for parking, public transportation that you're going to have to take, insurance and doctor's visits, food costs, even their gas prices, which were up in the $8 range for a while, and you can't work during med school. So that will actually, the cost of living outside of the med school fees can significantly increase your med school debt. Look at where they have rotations, right? If they're in areas where you're going to have to increase your cost of living for third and fourth year, that will add debt. Now, it could be beneficial because they have elective rotations or audition rotations in areas that you want, but just know there's going to be adjustments made for that. So don't just look at tuition dollars, look at overall cost of living and look at the preclinical on-campus years and then look at third year for the rotations. Fourth year, you end up kind of everywhere because you're doing auditions. So that's an anomaly basically for everybody, but look at first and second year and then third year. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think that's very smart. And I mean, JB, again, it's so wonderful that happened. Like, what a great problem to have.
What a good position to be in.
So those of you who've been with us for years, maybe have seen some workshops we've done with Student Loan Planner. We're not officially affiliated with them, but we like them. They give good advice and they give a lot of it for free before, like you can buy things from them. But so they have a similar ethos. And I remember something their founder said once is, figure out a couple really big ways you're going to save money and then let yourself have little luxuries. And that doesn't work for everyone. Some people really need to live alone because they need to study in dead silence. But if you have a used car and you have a roommate or two, then hopefully you can allow yourselves that daily Starbucks or whatever you need. Like you're going to need to make some concessions because your life is going to be so hard, right? So figure out where you can make big savings and then just live, right? Like you don't need to deprive yourself of every little thing, Yeah. You're going to get into debt no matter what. I mean, yeah, you're going to get into debt.
That prompted a thought. that another thing that I heard over and over and over again, please do not go out and make any big purchases. Don't go out and buy a brand new car. Don't buy a house or things like that ahead of getting your loans, because your debt to income ratio will affect the rates that you get for your loans going into med school. So please don't do that. Talk to the financial aid office. They will be experts. They will have access to resources to, be able to reach out to these companies to look at your specific kind of tailor-made financial situation. If you're going to need a cosigner, that goes for them as well. No huge purchases, because those things will affect the percentages and the rates that you're going to get. So don't do that ahead of securing your loans, please.
Yep. And JB, if you want to come on the Premed Years podcast and share your amazing story, go to medicalschoolhq.net/apply.
Cool.
Kyle, if I completed an interview with my top choice school in September and haven't heard back, would it be beneficial to send a letter of intent prior to receiving a decision? The wonderful letter of intent question, Rachel. We get it all the time. The student is asking the right question because they have interviewed,
Right.
but they haven't heard anything yet. It's been a while.
Would it be beneficial? Sure. If you do it well, it can't hurt. Right. To me, the only time they really do harm is when they're not there. If the school explicitly says they don't want them and you send one anyway, because then you have failed the reading instructions test. Something that I think is important to understand about these letters of intent is they should be short and sweet and truthful. And also you should understand that maybe it will get read and added to your file and help, or maybe it will go into the void. Because the person who's collecting mail and putting notes in file may not be someone who's sitting in on those those hours-long committees debates where they're all kind of trying to envision who's going to fit at their school. So sure, if the school accepts them, go for it. But I just, they have a system in place that funnels thousands of people. And so one-offs just don't always really enter the flow that well. So I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, just trying to be realistic. It may get seen. It may not get seen by anyone but one person in the office.
Yep. Jean St. Pierre. My data into MAP shows the upward trend. My science GPA is not strong. MAPT suggests an SMP. I'm an Application Academy student. Can you all help me decide? Please, I'm desperately needing some advice. I'm not sure what you mean by MAPT suggests an SMP. I'm assuming you mean the advisor through the MAPS chat. I mean, that's us. So if we're saying do an SMP, then that's the answer. I'm not sure what different answer you're looking for here without us being able to look at your data.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, Jean St. Pierre, the mapped advisors are the Med School HQ advisors. So if a human being told you that, and like if you've got the pro level or free trial, and someone,
which they do if they're an Application Academy student.
Yeah, I just looked in the file. So one of our Med School HQ advisors that you see on About Us page did not say you need an SMP. I think you want to go back and reread the 3 paragraphs she wrote you, because she gave you something way more nuanced than that. But yeah, obviously this is in a one-on-one private session. We can't spend an hour doing deep dive analysis with you, but you probably still have more repair work to do.
Yep. And as an Application Academy student, you do get a discounted sessions with an advisor. If you want to do a deep dive one-on-one session, you can do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Application Academy is opening back up this month, by the way. applicationacademy.com. Go get on the wait list. We're rocking and rolling for the new year.
Yeah.
Grace asks, follow-up question. I plan to apply this May 2024, and I only took Biochem lecture during undergrad, 3 credit hours. In schools, I am applying to list Biochem with 4 credit hours on MSAR, but not requiring lab. But then on their website, it just says 1 semester Biochem Lab Not Required. So I'm wondering if I need to take another course or lab. Courtney, this is where the fun nuance of undergraduate institutions comes into play. Some institutions, Biochem is 3 credits, some it's 4 credits. And if a school lists 4 credits, do they really mean just 1 semester and a 3-credit semester is going to be fine? Like, do schools see that nuance?
Yeah, how they interpret it will probably be slightly different, but I mean, if it's a 1-semester course, lab not required, most science courses fall into the 3-credit portion. You know, you do kind of run into if it's published as 4 credits minimum, then you may have to run into things, but the dean can approve it. It doesn't sound to me like you need to take another one based off of that verbiage, especially if they weren't requiring a lab. You know, I think more than likely the 1 semester of biochem that you took qualifies under part of their description of what they are looking for. But depending on how crazy they want to be. And this is a good example of exactly why we can't be super granular and give you like every little data point, because there is a lot of nuance to how registrars track things. And if we say something, then we're kind of held to it. And we may be ruling out people that we don't mean to be just because we assigned a credit hour value to it, and not every school goes by that credit hour value. But I know I've taken, you know, things up to the dean and stuff like that, or to the AdCom, and, you know, not to give anybody any leeway, but it was just a nuance of a system that was outside of their control and under part of the classification they qualified. Sometimes that would happen with like English and stuff. So
yeah,
should be okay.
Yeah. So one specific example for me, right, when I was in undergrad many moons ago, and it's still an issue because I was talking to a parent recently, their kid was going to take the same classes that I took. Most medical schools have the 1 year of organic chemistry, 1 semester of biochemistry. I took bioorganic chemistry. It was an accelerated advanced course that I took. It was recommended. The professor was phenomenal. He ended up being fantastic, and I had a great relationship with him. But it didn't meet the standard 2 semesters of organic chemistry, 1 semester of biochemistry, because it was 2 semesters smushed together, all of those 3. And the medical schools didn't blink an eye. They were like, yep, this is this weird course, and we know it meets the requirements, so we're fine. Aditya. I'm currently working as a CNA 5 shifts per week, meaning I have little time for anything else. Would you suggest reducing my hours to diversify my clinical hours, or should I concentrate them? Concentrate what? I'm not sure.
Concentrate on them?
Concentrate, yeah. Why do you need to diversify your clinical hours? That's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one big question. Although I don't think the episode is out yet. I had a very interesting conversation with the director of admissions at UCF medical school, Laurel, and she talked about she kept saying volunteer clinical, and I stopped her at one point. I'm like, you keep saying volunteer clinical. Do you differentiate between paid clinical and volunteer clinical, where you're putting more emphasis on volunteer clinical? And she said, yes, absolutely. And a little piece of me died inside. I don't like that, but that's that nuance of just every medical school is going to be a little bit different in terms of what they want, what they expect, what they prioritize. And we historically say, in general, there's no difference between paid and volunteer clinical experience. Now, this one school, and there may be others, they disagree.
Yeah.
So
They're
As
really
somebody who
stressed.
comes from a very, very low socioeconomic standing growing up, I feel like that places some barriers
100%.
on people
It's
that,
like you have to have the privilege of having additional time to volunteer.
well,
And there are a lot of med
and be
schools.
able to support yourself, right? You have to have other people who can support you so that you can volunteer your time versus being able to pay your bills. So that makes me grumpy. That makes me grumpy. I don't like it.
Same.
But
But-
at least she's honest. At least she's honest with it, and that's something that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's an antiquated
They're
system.
transparent.
Yep, it's an antiquated system. We know that, and some things, there's so many decision makers, there's so many hands in the pot, and I think most of the time they're trying to do the right thing. They don't want to introduce risk, especially being in Fullerton. Maybe they're wanting people that work more with underrepresented and underserved populations and things like that. And maybe more of those types of opportunities in that area are voluntary. So let's assume nice things, but it makes me grumpy.
Yeah. I don't like anything that is you're rewarded because you had more resources to help you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, transparency is key. I really appreciate that person's honesty. And all of these things are nuanced, right? So even that one data point that she gave, we don't want to take in a vacuum, right?
Yep.
Because she's still looking at every person holistically too, just like every med school admissions officer.
Loretta, how old is too old to apply? At Mapped Con in Baltimore, Dr. Ray asked the non-trads how many of you are in your 50s. He did not ask how many of you are in your 60s. Is 60 too old to apply? Rachel?
Do you feel like it is?
Yeah, I think what Courtney just said is right. I know you said Rachel, but I love that chime in. Loretta, first of all, thanks for coming to MapCon. We are so thrilled at how many people were there. Only you know, I mean, you don't know your exact life expectancy, but you probably have a guess, right? And only you know your level of physical fitness. I don't think anyone is ever too old unless they decide they are. It's a long investment, right? Several years of being pre-med and then 4 years of med school and then residency and sometimes additional training after that. So it's a long time to work before you start to see financial rewards. Hopefully you're getting some emotional and like academic rewards the whole time. And the system does expect a lot of physical ability. I was just reading a day in the life of a surgical resident, and their average day started at 4 a.m. so they could be at the hospital at 5, and they counted themselves very lucky the days that they got home at 6 p.m. So a 13-hour day for them was a huge win. And that's, on your feet, lunch on the go, day after day. And I definitely know people in their 50s and 60s who could do that, frankly, better than I can now. And so I think it just depends on who you are. Do you have the mental and physical stamina?
Age is protected. It's a protected status. They shouldn't be able to use that.
They shouldn't,
or against,
but they do.
I worded it carefully. They shouldn't be able to use that against you. The comments that would often come up and questions you may want to anticipate having to answer is, being kind of at this stage of life, what's the draw, right? And that's a question that we ask everybody, but what's the draw? What do you plan to do with it? Kind of why now? How long do you kind of anticipate yourself doing this? And then honestly, just like tech, are you savvy with tech? Because if not, that will raise concern for them. Accommodations for that are very minimal and can be problematic. And so don't introduce risk there. I would say, be very computer savvy, be very tech savvy and things. You're going into something that has now electronic records and different systems, and you're going to have to do virtual anatomy and go to all kinds of different resources and stuff. So those would be the things that would kind of come up loosely in roundabout ways. And I just know that there's discussion kind of at a national level about those kinds of things so that we can be inclusive and not use age to discriminate, but wanting to make sure that people are able to move at the pace that med school education needs to move at.
Yeah.
I could just picture the accommodation request. Like, I need a loud typewriter in the classroom during lectures.
No,
because I cannot use a laptop. And they're like, ding.
Well, and nationally, how this came up was somebody had requested somebody that would come and do notes on the computer for them. They didn't know very much about working the computer in a great level of detail, so they wanted basically a scribe to come and help them do that, which would be incredibly expensive, and there was no way that was going to happen. So hence they are risk adverse. They want to mitigate risk. So if you
and that's not like an ADA protected thing. Like not knowing how to use technology is not ADA protected, right?
Right.
So that's just weird.
It's a good question. I would look at the minimal technical standards that are published nationally, just to reference those, and if anything, should be okay. If you want to do it, you're good with answering the questions, you're wanting to take it on, you feel like you qualify, there's nothing keeping you from doing that, and schools won't keep you from doing that, but they'll have some questions just to double check.
Yep. The technical standards piece, I think, is good to bring up. It's something every medical school has a technical standards that's published that says this is the minimum that we expect you to do, need to do. And I had someone on the podcast several months ago. She has a condition of her bones that causes some movement limitations, and she went through the technical standards of all of the schools, and she found about a dozen or so that she met their technical standards. The rest she did not, and those are the schools that she applied to, and she was successful in her cycle. So for Loretta, if there are things that at your age you can or can't do, just go through the technical standards. But I think a big kind of unasked question here is it worth it? Right. I think from a financial standpoint, and I have this argument all the time. There's someone in the space, a physician who runs a very successful company and podcast and has written books all about the financial side of being a physician and being a high income health professions earner. And he boils almost everything down into, is it financially worth it? And at 60 years old, it may not be financially worth it to go into debt, to go to school, to come out, to do residency, and then start making money and have that debt, assuming you have to take debt to do this. It may not financially be worth it. And you may die with financial education debt. But the question is, are you going to be fulfilled, right? Or are you going to live your last however many years with regret that you didn't do it? And so I think the psychological aspect of is it worth it is often overlooked for strictly financial reasons.
Yeah.
Lawrence, does rigor of undergraduate institution matter in terms of GPA? For example, very high GPA at a less rigorous university? No, it does not. Easy.
I would say it's noticed. Will it trump anything? No, but it's noticed.
Yeah, I think sometimes Ryan and I answer these questions from our place of idealism. It shouldn't matter, so it doesn't matter. And then sometimes I notice especially with GPA and prestige of school, that you and Dina will be like, wow. And that, again, it's something that makes me grumpy, but also like if Ryan and I have leapt a little too far ahead in our idealism and there are some lingering things, I think it's good to know. The flip side, and Lawrence, this isn't about you. I'm using an example from someone I worked with several years ago. A student went to Cornell and was in her second year and had a 2.2 and had pretty much said, I don't think I can do better than this. Like, these are the grades I'm going to continue to get. And she still wanted to apply to med school on the grounds that a 2.2 at Cornell should be equivalent to a 4.0 at some state school. And I was like, yeah, no. Like, I mean, I didn't, I hate to be a Debbie Downer. I wasn't telling her, no, you can't go to med school. But I was like, they need to know that you can handle academic rigor. And you're saying I muddle through. Like,
I would say it's kind of it comes into play when things are kind of polarized. So like a 3.98 majority taken at a community college and then kind of sparse for the rest of it, as opposed to like a UC quarter system moving through and maybe like a 3.6 or a 3.7. The AdCom can look at that, but it's on an individual basis. There's no like, oh, they went to Stanford, they're good. Any GPA is fine. Absolutely not. But academics are looked through pretty extensively. So it can be noted. I have seen it discussed or noted, but it may not be a qualifying or disqualifying factor unless some other piece of the puzzle, again, introduces a risk. So is it a high GPA and then a really low MCAT where you're like, ooh, what happened? Or like you majored in something and then those subsections are really low. What happened? You have 100 credits in that topic of material. What's going on? So that's kind of when it gets noted. But other than that, it's just a data point.
Javraj? Sorry if I butchered that. It's fun, though. It's a palindrome. Is it? I can't see it. No, it's not a palindrome. Never mind. I never went to office hours for any of my classes. Now I'm hesitant to ask for letters of recommendations, especially the science professors. I do have all A's, but I'm not sure if they even remember me. Any advice? Rachel, a letter of recommendation is not meant to say, hey, this student got an A. It's meant to go deeper than that. What should this thing do?
So, Javraj, my advice is, you see this little blue box on my bookshelf there? That's a place that it's a time machine. You got to get in that thing and go back in time 3 years. No, I mean, what can you do, right? Like, you can't go back in time 3 years. You need to go reach out to those professors. I don't know if you're on campus or not anymore, but I would recommend, if at all possible, some in-person visits. Maybe some emails and then some in-person visits. You need to go reconnect with them. And also, like, remember that human interactions are not a mystery to you, right? Like, you might feel intimidated because it's your professor and you want a letter of rec, but you typically know when people will or won't remember you, because often it is tied to how you remember them, right? So you need to just reflect honestly on, are there any professors you interacted more with others? And again, like Ryan said, it's not just about the A. A lot of med schools do expect science professor letters, but they need to be able to say who you are as a person. And so if you didn't know them at all, you're just going to have to go ask. And, if you really don't have anyone, you may have to think about, do I need to take some additional courses? But there's no way through this now other than just ripping the Band-Aid off, right? You just need to go see what their responses are. And again, you're not just looking for someone who can say, I got an A. You're looking for someone who can speak to your ability to work under academic rigor, right? Like, An A is great, but do they know you?
They'll probably want to see like a mapped account or like a resume or something like that. Have some discussion with you too. So just know that. Don't go in empty-handed.
Yep.
Dylan, is an institutional action for a conduct violation a deal breaker for medical schools? Courtney, I'm sure you've seen lots of institutional actions.
I have.
When is it a deal breaker and when is it, yep, you were young and dumb and you've learned?
Yeah, I think most of them kind of qualify as that, where it's, I had an open container freshman year, or paraphernalia of some sort, things like that, which could usually be overlooked if there's some time and kind of distance between when the sanction happened and who you are as a person now, and also not repeated offenses, okay? So a one-time situation, you got the sanction, you reported it, and no more since that time, generally it won't keep you out. I will say cheating or plagiarism when you're going into a higher education setting can be incredibly detrimental and could potentially be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
So that's something that you'll have to navigate very thoughtfully and very carefully if that is the conduct violation. They don't take kindly to it. You like whisper the word cheating on one of these campuses and, you know, people like, you know, it's just, they don't take kindly to it.
Thor. How are students who transfer from a four-year college to another four-year college viewed? I'm considering transferring as a sophomore. I'm concerned.
I bet you that's I may, not I am.
I may have to take gap year if I transfer. Yeah, you're fine. There's all this concern about transferring. Like, it happens. There are reasons for it. You're good.
Do better at the next school.
Or the same if you're a 4.0 student.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't drop. That's the question. Sean Patel, if you are applying in 2024, can you apply with letters of rec from 2023, or do you have to update the year? Courtney, this question comes in all the time, and we have a letter of recommendation service built into Mapped Pro now as well for students applying to AMCAS and ACOMAS. As a former director of admissions, would you frown upon letters that were a little bit older? Do you require them to be the same year?
Not required. So the have to, like you put, no, you don't have to do that. Would I strongly recommend that you do have the year updated? Yes, I do strongly recommend that. That would be a very strategically thoughtful thing to do. Dates matter. If something has lapsed and it's, you know, now 2 years old, we don't know if that person is still advocating for you, if you still know that person. It also, most people will make the assumption, whether correct or incorrect, that you have been unsuccessful from the date of that letter to present in obtaining a seat, and they will wonder why. So it introduces a thought, again, whether correct or incorrect, that there may be some issue. And so you just want to have the letter updated. They don't have to change any of the other content, but they need to resubmit the letter with the current date. So no, you don't have to, but it's not a good thing to do, I would say. Not looked on favorably at all. I guess to push it further is you're going up against what, 6,000 other candidates, you know, like you don't want to get your letters updated. Like, this is competitive and they're having to make snap decisions and assumptions. That's what they're paid to do as evaluators very quickly based on the information that you give them. And so whether it's out of laziness that you don't get them updated, or maybe you're worried about reaching back out to those people to not get the same letters, or whatever it is, it's not a good look. Nothing favorable from a dated letter that's old, from a prior cycle or not, is viewed upon positively. And when you're going up against that many other candidates, you want to put in the effort to give them exactly what it is they're asking for and put your strongest application forward. So you should consider it very worth your time to get those resubmitted.
Yep.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to pronounce that one. What's the best GPA improving option? SMP or do-it-yourself postbac for a pre-med graduating with a 2.8 GPA in May and an upward trend in the last 30 hours. I have a lot of research and great extracurriculars. I love when students throw that in going, it's going to make up for my poor GPA. Rachel, you threw your hands up there.
Yeah. Well, because the best one is the one that works for you. Right? SMP DIY postbac. You also didn't mention just group postbac. There are postbacs that are specifically for enhancing grades that can be DIY or group. I guess one thing I would say is SMP as a GPA improving option, although SMPs are really rigorous and definitely can be a nice thing on your application and a great experience to get some exposure to what Med 1 courses are like. They often have their own GPA standards. So, I mean, I would do some research because it's possible that your GPA won't be enough to get into an SMP. I'm not saying that won't happen. I'm saying just look into it. But yeah, if you have an upward trend, but you know with your history that you need more of an upward trend, then whatever program is going to get you to new upper level sciences, right? And so depending on how many courses you've taken, it might not be here's the program I want. It might be here's the program that offers me courses that I haven't taken before that are in upper level biology, right? Because that's where you really need to show that you can handle rigor. You need to show med schools that despite your cumulative, that the student you are today and for the last year or two is not the student you were those first few years. And which program you do for it is just whatever's going to work for you.
Yep. Sasha, I am looking to start a research opportunity now and during my gap year. I am also applying this year and want to know if it looks bad to start a research opportunity 5 months before applying. Rachel, your favorite quote?
If not now, when? When's the best time to plant a tree? Is that the one you wanted?
That's the one.
Yeah. So Sasha, best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Second best time is today. Now keep in mind, research doesn't always carry the same value in med school applications. Some med schools do favor it. Many med schools are more concerned about you getting it during med school for your residency, where it will play a huge role. But if you are thrilled with your grades and your MCAT and you're continuing to get clinical and shadowing and research is the thing that you haven't gotten to yet and it really fascinates you, then yes, go for it. And better 5 months to applying than 1 month to applying, right? It's for people who are applying this spring, if you have things you need to do to improve your application, yes, start now. Don't give up hope. It's not a great look if you start in April or May, but big difference between 5 months and 3 weeks, right? So if it's something you really want to pursue and you have time, go for it.
Go for it. All right, friends, we have come to the close of another Premed Office Hours, the first episode of 2024. Definitely won't be the last. So join us every Wednesday. Mark it in your calendars. Subscribe to us on YouTube, all of that good stuff, so that you can come hang out with us every Wednesday and get free Premed advising. If you would like to hang out with us more in a one-on-one, more private arena, go check out medicalschoolhq.net/advising and learn about how our advisors can help you through the application process, the pre-med process,
That sounded
all of that
a little
good
bit
stuff.
scandalous in a more
Maybe it was
private
meant
setting.
to be. A little entendre there.
Mm.
Yeah. So come hang out.
Yes.
Rachel, Courtney, thanks for joining, sharing your wisdom. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.